Jai Hind, viewers. We welcome you back to another very interesting subject, and that is that when we are looking at equipment, how do we decide whether to sustain or to replace it? And we have a very eminent panel with us. We have with us Major General Ranjit Ghosh, who served as the Additional Director General of Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineers. He is a postgraduate gold medalist from IIT Madras in maintenance engineering. He was chief managing director of an army base workshop dealing with A vehicles. At strategic level, he steered life cycle engineering support for Army's capital acquisitions and revenue procurements. General Ghosh has authored books on global defense industries. We also have with us Brigadier YVR Vijay, who served in the Corps of Electronics and Mechanical Engineers, where he was Chief Managing Director of an Army base workshop. After retirement from the Army, he entered the renewable energy sector, where he was the COO of Enercon India Limited and subsequently the COO of Suzlon Global Services Limited. He is now a subject matter consultant on renewable energy to Boston Consultancy Group, McKinsey, GLG, GuidePoint, Alpha Sites, and Third Bridge. And we also have with us Air Cmde DB Murali, retired after 35 years of service and has worked in MROs for aircraft and aero engines. He has worked in fighters mainly and also flown multi-engined aircraft as flight engineer. He was instrumental in induction of a trainer and fighter aircraft into service. He was key in the reliability improvement program of a frontline fighter engine abroad. He is now a VP at GMR in charge of the defense MRO at Hyderabad. With that, now I will first request General Ghosh to give his initial thoughts on this very important subject, which has got big cost implications. General Ghosh, please.
Thank you, sir, and Jai to my fellow panelists as well as the viewers. The subject is whether to sustain or replace an equipment. Now, this equipment could be a civil use equipment or a military use equipment. If there is civil use equipment like a mobile, which I'm holding, I graduate from a S20 to a S23, maybe if it's of a particular make. Why I do so is because the technology has changed. It has given me better features. The cost may be up, so that cost benefit I have to work out. I may be having additional money with me, so I'll go for it. I may not have the money, so I will not go for it. So the decision hangs on a number of factors. It depends on what is the product and what is the life that the useful life that we are expecting out of it. And based on this, we start deciding whether to continue with a particular asset or to do away with it and get its replacement. Now, when can such replacements take place? First is when there is a new product or a better product, as I just bought out, which is coming into the market, and you feel you have the resource and the capability to acquire it, and there is a necessity for its utilization. That is one. Second is when it comes down to certain change of your policy. It may be a business policy, it may be a change of tactics in terms of military parlance, where tactically there is a requirement, like you land up with some non-state actors which have come in. Your internal security requirements require a particular type of equipment to come in. So you want to, or it has got better electronic warfare measure capabilities or ECM capabilities, whatever is the specific requirement, that may trigger the requirement of replacing your old system. Then there is technological advancements, like we found the satellite communication replacing the normal radio communication, or the GPS replacing the inertial navigation system. So such kind of developments always will bring in better products which may trigger the requirement. It could be also your adversary picking up something and you want to match it up, let it be an aircraft, let it be a ship, or let it be a weapon platform. So there are various timings or situations where you will be looking at a replacing a particular product or a equipment or a weapon system or a weapon platform, whatever is the level at which you're looking at. At the same time, you have certain replacement policies which come into effect, like we have a discard policy in case of certain service requirements, where we discard a particular class of a vehicle or a class of equipment with certain yardsticks which have been arrived at. That, and how does it come out? Whenever you procure a particular item or a equipment, a product or a system, that OEM, the original manufacturer, he specifies a particular useful life of a equipment. So if I procure a major platform or aircraft or a ship or something, I'm looking at a life of about 25 years, 30 years, which is the useful life. I will exploit it to that, but thereafter I have to replace it because it has lived its useful life. If it is a high cost equipment, I may extend that life in terms of certain life extensions. I may put in physical technological insertions, I may put in tactical insertion requirements or certain upgrades and bring it up and extend it further. But at still a particular time before it breaks down completely in terms of structural and other fatigue failures and other things where you cannot do anything with it. That is one part. Second part is you may think, no, it's not a very high cost equipment, I will change it. So I put a particular time when my operation or my costs of maintaining it, operating it exceeds a particular threshold. And I say, okay, now it's time for it to go and get a new version which has to come. Then there are other options also, like if you see your own country's historical perspective. There was a time when we went in for the two wars of 65 and 71. There were alliances between countries, which diverted our source of supply from one to the other. So we came in for certain Indo-Russian friendship, and that was a Russian fleet of equipment, be it Army, Navy, Air Force, which came in. So these are political, or these are what will I call it? It is the global scenario which develops global alliances, global denials in terms of platforms being made available. So these also make you decide that should it go for, like the Russia-Ukraine conflict has brought in again the technology. It has brought in a complete shift of the tank fleet of the Czech Republic, because they feel they should, firstly, they have gone in for a NATO, so they require to have something commonality with NATO. Secondly, it is something where they want disruptive technologies to come in. So the entire fleet of T series of tanks is out, and there is a complete Leopard and others who are coming in. So why? Because technologically they feel alliances. Now this is a combination of all the 4 or 5 factors which I brought out. It could be global implications, it could be technological implications, it could be tactical implications, it could be as a group of NATO that you're fighting coalition requirements, which leads you to a replacement of a particular weapon platform or system. These are my initial thoughts. However, the overriding factor is the cost. The cost of retention versus cost of replacement is what actually decides how, and more of it in our further deliberations. These are the initial thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Ghosh. That's very, you have brought out the factors. And as you rightly said, that in addition to the factors, maybe the one which is normally the main one is the cost. Now, Brigadier YVR Vijay, in some of our earlier discussions, maybe very, very early discussions when we got together as a group, he was talking to me, and I heard his professional take on this aspect of how to balance out repair cost and replacement cost. And he used a term called leveling cost. This term I heard from him, which he has been using in his renewable energy career, and advising the user accordingly. So that day, I think I remember we mentioned that maybe there's a third aspect which comes in, that is a user's decision, which is the person who is overall responsible to take a call on it. And at that level, maybe there are some other factors which also come in, like the strategic aspect and the operational aspect. These come in, and then a particular call gets taken. So these considerations are there. So I will now request Brigadier YVR Vijay to give his expert opinions on this aspect between the decision making between sustainment and replacement of an equipment. Brigadier Vijay, please.
Thank you, sir. And Jayant to everybody, to all my fellow panelists. So I will first start with weapon systems, and then I will look at how in the commercial world we look at whether to replace or sustain. As far as weapon systems goes, the overriding parameter is the threat assessment. You could be having a brand new tank which is hardly maybe 3-4 years old, but if the enemy has acquired something which is a couple of generations ahead, and whatever upgrades you do, you cannot match up, it is pointless to spend money and sustain such an equipment. So the topmost priority has to be always the threat assessment. Against whom are we planning to employ it? Will this be effective? So we have to look at certain filters based on which you finally end up, this has to be sustained or this have to be replaced. So the first filter I would look at is the threat assessment. Is it effective against the enemy? Yes, then you can consider, okay, now I will still go ahead with the filters. If not, I have got to replace. Next is it interoperable with the rest of my systems? In modern war, as Ghosh was bringing out, suddenly that tank by itself has to be interoperable with all the other systems playing in, the other systems with you and with your allies. So it has to be interoperable with the latest communication systems. It has to be interoperable with the UAVs and drones operating. It has to be interoperable with the, let us say now he gave an example of a country which is switching from the Eastern Bloc to the NATO. It has to be interoperable with the allied forces. So is this weapon system interoperable or not? If it is not interoperable, then it tends that you should look at replacement. Next is, I should sustain that equipment if there are compatible technical upgrades available. If there is no technical upgrade available, and I have to use the weapon as such, the way it was, then you look, is it effective still? Then I'll sustain it. Otherwise, I may not run it. Of course, from the EME point of view, you will look at how close is this weapon to obsolescence? What is its wear and tear? What is the availability of spares? If case the wear, tear, availability of spares is too little and too much wear and tear, you might take a call to replace. So the BR, BLR aspects which we so often discuss in the EME comes into play. Then comes the life cycle management cost, which we were talking of. And in the civil, in the commercial world, it is very easily quantifiable. Here, because the equipment will be used on an eventuality of a war. Otherwise, it is just a question of your holding it and maintaining it as a deterrence. But in the civil world, especially, I'll talk about the wind energy business where I was. We have defined something called the levelized cost of energy. So let us say I have a turbine already existing, which has got 10 years life left. And I also have a much higher superior turbine, which can generate much more energy and has got 25 years left. Then what I do is I calculate over the rest of this turbine's life, how many units will it generate? And I divide it by whatever I will spend on it. Sorry, the other way around. Whatever I will spend on it, divided by the how many units it will generate. So let us say I have to spend 1 crore on this turbine to maintain it for next 10 years, but it will generate to me only say 10 lakh units. So that means each unit of energy is going to cost me 10 rupees to maintain. So my levelized cost of energy is very high. And on new turbine, while the turbine may be very costly, I may be able to generate many more units. So the levelized cost of energy comes down to 2 rupees a unit. I will buy a new turbine. In case the levelized cost of energy is justifying me maintaining and sustaining the older turbine, I will maintain that. So it's all about cost. What is the levelized cost you're spending to produce 1 unit of energy? So that is a concept which is used in Wind turbines, it is a concept used even in the solar industry. When you have to look up there, every year, 3-4 years, better panels are coming. Should I replace my old panels and get in new panels? The levelized cost of energy is taken into account. And so wherever you can quantify the commercial value an equipment is giving you, you can use this levelized. For the defense, we have to look at it with looking at the operational lethality, the threat assessment, etc. Budget, of course, is a very key factor. But I mean, if the weapon could be as good as possible, if it is useless in war, irrespective of budget, you have got to get rid of it. It's pointless keeping such a weapon. So that is my initial opening view, sir.
Thank you, Brigadier Vijay. So you have explained this concept of levelized cost to the viewers, and the quantification aspect. Especially, I like the way you reduce everything to, for example, in the wind energy industry, you bring it down to levelized cost per unit of energy. Likewise, everything can be brought down to a unit once it is decided and it's a quantifiable unit. That's a good point. And over here, viewers, I may like to also mention to you that we have the link to Brigadier Vijay's profile and also of the profiles of all of the panelists in the show notes below. And they are experts, who have spent decades doing this. And in case you can benefit from what they are saying, you are welcome to get in touch. And they will respond and help you in whichever way you can. Now I will be requesting Air Commodore Murali for his comments. And I have seen in surveys that as far as MRO is concerned, in our group, we look at MRO not only for aviation systems, for land as well as marine also. Because maintenance, repair and overall, or maintenance, repair and operations happen in all these systems. But I have seen in the case of aviation, everything gets accentuated. Because the costs are high, so decision making is forced, and especially since the aircraft it flies in the air. So the safety requirements are so acute that decision making has to become very sharp and fail-proof. So in this case, maybe some insights come out, and maybe from the aviation assets point of view, Air Commodore Murali, when he tells us, we will see that there are some special insights based on which sustain or replace decisions are taken. So maybe have your initial views, Air Commodore Murali, please.
Good evening, sir. Jai Hind, and good evening to all the other panelists. Irrespective of airborne, land-based, or marine, and I will be, the sustained replace and replace is sustained further is the mode of operation which we all follow when the cost economics come. And I will be touching upon both airborne and marine together, because I feel these are two assets which are quite bulky. I mean, sort of huge investments which are getting, you can't get a ship inside onto the land and then do that, whatever you want, and put it back in the sea. Same way aircraft also, when it goes to AOG and like a Christmas tree, it's very difficult to get it back. So we have a very, very important aspect of these platforms which are operated in these two arenas: weapon platform and non-weapon platform. Weapon delivery platform and non-weapon delivery platform. Both are there. Non-weapon is basically the transport aircraft. And we have today the transport aircraft also delivering weapons. And most of the issues which are now on sustenance is basically the environmental and operational aspects. These are the two things which actually it takes a beating when it comes to sustenance. Environmental aspects are tested in the design stage, wherein a little design quality looks into it, but the operational exploitation is up to the user. So it all depends on how we use, on each country uses, and accordingly there are failures which are happen, and that has to be addressed in the sustenance phase. So the major aspect which comes out is the MTBF and the MTTR, that is the mean time between failures and the mean time to repair. While the mean time between failures are, basically there can be a system wherein the mission-based data archiving can be taken from the a new generation aircraft from the 3rd generation onwards, wherein we can take this data, analyze it, and find out the mean time between failures as one of the DCC parameters for sustenance or replacing. As far as the mean time MTTR is concerned, that is an important aspect where the MRO data comes in and the MRO existence come in, where mean time to repair. So these two are actually twin brothers. I mean, it is something like both has to go on if at all you want to sustain. So sustenance depends on these two major parameters. When it comes to collection and data analysis and the remedies, time-bound remedies which we try to incorporate, the major factor which comes in is the reliability quotient. So the reliability quotient of each platform has to be assessed on a regular basis as that platform gets exploited. Like you may have an aircraft or a ship which is in the initial first half of its life doing well, but midlife won't sustain. The midlife is a very important phase of a operating weapon platform system, wherein the operational effects as well as environmental effects will start taking the beating on the platform. So that is where we had to start our sustenance engineering. Sustenance engineering has to be planned from mid-life and start towards end life. So I say 10-15% before the end life. And that is the time when we can take the call of life extension, which is actually a sustenance model. So far with the Russian systems, we have been operating without any much of intelligent data available with the platforms. We have been on a staircase approach, wherein try one year, if it is okay, then try one more year and keep going. But that is not the way today with the type of high thrust ratio platforms which we have with very advanced materials, composites coming in, and we cannot afford to do that. It has to be scientifically done. So that is where the challenges come in sustenance engineering, wherein bulletins modification are a major factor which we do, but that cannot be now done on a statistical model. It has to be on a scientific model. When it comes to replace, as Retd Vijay also, as well as General Ghosh told about the cost and MOQ, the quantity based, that is the way, yes, where the cost is less or quantity is more or less, we can go in for a replacement without much of thought. But when the cost is high and the quantity also is high, or the other way around, cost is high and the quantity is low, either way, on a two-and-a-half war front which we have, and with a global outreach which is expected out of our country, getting into a superpower business in the future, I feel the major decisive factors should come in are the low MTBF, high reliability quotient, addressing the obsolescence, especially for supply chain management and technology upgrades, which is happening quite fast. And the decisive factors for replacement is, as I said, is a low MTBF, high reliability quotient, obsolescence, especially for supply chain management as well as technology growth, which is taking place quite fast, and a high growth potential which should be available for the platform, and also on performance base especially, and the combat scenarios that and manufacturing lead times. Like for an aircraft, even if you have a contract in place, it will take another 6 years to get the planes, something like that. So the midlife call is very important, wherein your product is going to sustain or it is going to be extended. That is one area which we should be very, very focused on, and for this, MRO plays a very, very important role. That's all.
Thank you, Air Commodore Murali, for those inputs. Now, you see, we have a present system which we have been also seeing for decades, and we are moving into the future. A number of new opportunities are emerging for us to maybe transit. So keeping these in mind, what do you think is the way we should approach these opportunities, and based on what our earlier experiences, and maybe devise a newer method to look at this whole issue of sustain or replace? Anybody?
So before we go on to a futuristic system, we should first address the present system and what it is. Then we'll come on to how we can change the system to as far as the replacement or sustenance of a particular weapon platform or equipment is concerned in the military parlance or in the civil parlance subsequently. Continuing with the military aspects of replacement, it primarily, actually, since all the panelists have been speaking on that, we'll finish with that before we go on to the civil aspects. So what we have to see that replacement is primarily a introduction of a new equipment. Now there is a set procedure which is there as far as the military environment is concerned, you have a particular national strategy on which you have certain operational directives, on which you have certain threat assessments, and from threat assessments you have your interests, and thereafter from interest you come on to what is your requirement. Now that is the policy statement which comes out. With the policy statement comes out the equipment policy statement, which gives out what is the life of this equipment, how long, what is the useful life, what kind of extensions can come into that life in terms of all these upgrades or modifications, retrofitments and others. Will it be extended? Will it not be extended? In case of a vehicle or some low-cost equipment, it is not going to be extended. It has got a particular life. It will be discarded. There will be a discard policy which will come out and which will put it out in a particular time frame. So this is how it is. Now, based on that, you decide, should I, once your service headquarter formulates, this is my requirement, you say, okay, should I go for making it in India or should I get it from abroad? Once you plan to make it in India, you have certain timelines. You give it to this R&D, DRDO, they start developing it in-house or a private sector now. They take some time. There is an incubation time or there is a development cycle. If it's a major weapon platform, it's at least 25 years, for which it will be, it is at least 10 years and about 25 years that it will survive or it will stay as a useful life. It may go until 30, 40 subsequent. So you take that decision. You may think of license production, what you have done in the past, where you're transferring and doing it up. So, and the third is the import. So the replacement of that after being sustained will vary on what kind of effort is going into this whole system. Now, once you have decided this is the methodology that I'll apply, then you have to look at what is your replacement planning going to be, how this planning will fructify. Now, the planning will involve a whole lot of things. It will firstly involve what is the present equipment that you are holding. Suppose it's the fleet which you are changing. So I will take it as a tank fleet, suppose. Now, if a tank fleet has to be changed, you know that what are the numbers to be changed. You can't change all of them together. You can't procure or replace the whole thing together. It has to be a phased manner in which it will start moving out. Now that phasing of that equipment in terms of induction as a replacement will go concurrent to the earlier fleet which is also there. So sustenance wise, the earlier fleet or fleets in our this thing context, all the three fleets have to be managed in terms of sustenance effort. And the worst of the fleet will go out first with the first induction of the third family which is coming in, or the latest family of equipment which is coming in. So that is a management per se, management itself in terms of what kind of induction schedules that have to be made for the replacement for, or what kind of sustenance has to go in. Now the replacement which is coming in, also you have to look at what kind of resource do I have. Can I pick up the entire contract of that entire family of 100, 200, 300 as a full piece, full thing itself? Do I have that kind of resource, or should I stagger out my import acquisition or my production at my ordnance factories or wherever it is coming from, or your DPSUs or private sectors, whichever. So should it be phased out because you have got a budget which is getting given to you? So this finance has to get spread across in terms of your replacement coming in. The third is this replacement has to be cost optimal in terms of what Vijay bought out. You have to look at what is your existing. We are lucky that way that we had a Indo-Russian partnership on which your systems are more or less akin which is coming. So you utilize your existing infrastructure. You have certain PRDs, base workshops, naval dockyards, others within the country. They have got certain facilities which have come in. So you require a compatible replacement coming in so that sustenance becomes easy. So you go in because you have certain repair infrastructure available in all those 7 aspects of your infrastructure, repair centers, tools, test equipment. So if it is akin to that with the upgraded form, it becomes that much easier in terms of cost. So finally, it's the cost which is going to matter. So this is also a requirement which has to be seen. Based on this, you will have all other aspects within infrastructure, within spares, within training, within each sub-factor can again look into how best it can be optimized in terms of a cost. Thereafter, you start getting in that compatibility issue, what Brigadier Vijay brought up, what kind of standardization is being achieved, what kind of interoperability is being achieved within the systems, because you cannot, we may diversify our sources. If you have a fleet from a particular Western Bloc, Eastern Bloc, wherever it is, we had a Western Bloc, suppose tanks, we had a Western Bloc which had got phased out. then the Eastern Bloc or the Russian series have come in. So there has been cost savings in this. Then comes your budget. Should it be just the product itself coming in, or should it be sustenance infrastructure which should also come in with it? Should it form a part of the main contract, or should it form part of subsidiary contract, or a appendix to that contract subsequently? So all these aspects dictate your replacement. It dictates your funding. It dictates your sustenance, extension of sustenance of the old fleet. It demands concurrent sustenance, concurrent development, or concurrent import in terms of a family of equipment coming. So this is the kind of resource planning which has to be. So what we are looking at is, when do we replace it? How do we replace it? Why do we replace it? Are we in a position to replace it? What is the cost? I take it as these are the factors which have to get addressed. When do we replace it? We'll come on to General Matharu's question. What is the existing system? The existing system is looking at certain scientific models. I think we'll go into that details as it comes up for discussion. When that gives us the optimal time at which your optimum costs have been achieved, and thereafter it is a wasteful retention of our system, so it should be discarded or it should move out. Within the class of equipment, if it is a high cost or low cost, again variations will come. Second is how to replace it. I told you all these are every ingredient of sustenance infrastructure available within the country has to be utilized and cannot be thrown away. It has to be only added on with the new production line, new systems, upgraded systems. Ideally it is that. Ideally, of course, I said is your own systems. If not, X import is this. If design and development of your own people doing it, or license production, we have seen the processes, how it has gone. So each of these is a different chapter by itself to be discussed in terms of sustenance or replacement. How I told you, are we ready? Like, again, I come back to tanks, being a tank guy. The operator may not be ready to imbibe a new system. So do you graduate him from a family of maybe a generation 1 to 2 to 3, as you're going up, suppose it is that way, should you make him go from the lower end of the technology wise to the upper end, or should you make him shift from a Western product to a Eastern product? What is better? Both have been tried out in our country for at least in this MBT field of ours, and both have had the pros and cons. So these all are issues which have to be addressed. Is the training going to be abroad or is it going to be inside? If it is abroad, how much part outside in terms of the user or the maintainer? If it is inside, what are the facilities? What is the numbers to be trained? Then is there a training infrastructure of the user in terms of the training establishment? What are its replacements of modules in terms of assemblies, sub-assemblies, cut model, section models, technical literature? Is it there with the maintainer? What has to go to the operator? What has to go to the maintainer? Is it a full equipment to come in? Is it a part equipment? Is it a sectionized equipment? Is it softwares? Every gamut has to be planned. Each is a part of the life cycle cost. So this is a big decision. It is a decision which requires scientific techniques, a decision which requires scientific models, which we'll discuss after this, and a substitution of these models, as General Matharu has asked, what the future holds in terms of this kind of planning for replacement of leak systems. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, General Ghosh, for covering a large spectrum of points related to this aspect. Other panelists, would you like to respond in some way to what General Ghosh said? Anyone? Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Air Cmde Murali.
Sir, in fact, in our country now today, we have the 3 types of inventory. One is the TOT, the license production. The other one is the bought-out items, bought-out platforms, which just comes ready-made to use. And then you have the indigenous product. While the license production has been on SLA, that is service level agreements, and LTRA, long-term repair agreements, which has been sustained with little bit of self-modification, what you call, or and also upgrades, we have been sustaining. And when it comes to the bought-out items, it has been basically sustenance has been on the or by hour in civil, and in military it is performance-based logistics. Both are extremely costly to sustain and is eating into our revenue budget. So there has to be a need to look at this in a much more holistic way. And the major challenges in this field, now I will add the indigenous also, is the rapid technology changes which is happening. Some of the indigenous products which you have developed over a large lead time has already started getting obsolete. So how do you sustain even the indigenous ones as much as the ones which are bought out? Both are almost coming into a straight playing field. So one is upgrade on time and modify as needed. We should not neglect. Increase the number of redundancies at design level as far as possible to keep the MTBF low. So these are the challenges of which we had to do for sustenance engineering, which should be told to our designers, especially in the indigenous field at DRDO level. Sustenance engineering should start getting incorporated at the design stage itself. And if you start doing it when it comes to midlife, when we are looking at how to sustain it for some more time, or the time when we get a replacement, we will be much better off as a country, and that will only make our product more global.
Thank you very much, Air Commodore Murali. Brigadier Vijay, please go ahead.
In the new environment in which we are operating, another aspect we could look at when we decide whether to sustain or replace is, can we overhaul, reset an equipment to good condition and export it, sell it outside to third world countries and go in for the next generation weapon system? So then, the new financial calculations come. And sometimes it may be that that particular weapon by itself in a battlefield is vulnerable and you feel it is not effective, maybe. But can we add to the battlefield environment? Can we add more, attack hepters, missile systems, drones, which are much cheaper options? And suddenly you got a T-72 fleet, which is very lethal. So you don't just look at the weapon system and say, yes, it is not effective. So finally, it has to be a very calculated, data-driven decision in an integrated battlefield, where you will look at what is the cost of the upgrade versus a replacement. You will look at what is the impact of its reliability in a battle. If it has a high MTTR and low MTBF, what is the impact in a battle? It should not let me down in a battle. There's something called overall operation effectiveness, which is also used in industry, which is availability into performance into quality. It's a product, a number which comes in, by which you decide on the effectiveness of an item. How much time is it available that it comes out from MTTR, MTBF? Is it delivering what it was designed to deliver? And what is the quality of the delivery? So is it, say, achieving my, in terms of accuracy of its weapon systems, in terms of the quality of performance? Is it your, its mobility characteristics, etc.? Like this, you can, it's called overall operational effectiveness, which can be calculated. So finally, when we go into this, we have to define a filter, a mathematical filter. The first is effectiveness against threat. It is either yes or no. So if it is no, then you are shifting towards replacement. Next is compatibility with other systems. Yes or no. If you can make it compatible with other systems, you go into a sustainment model. If you just cannot make it compatible with other systems, you have to go towards the replacement. Is it compatible with the current tactics? Say the whole battlefield environment has changed and your strategy and tactics of your battle has changed. Is it compatible with that? A yes or no. Then on cost, whether it's BR, it's unreliable, it has got high MTTR, low MTBF, then you will have to take a call. What is the cost of the upgrading? Does it exceed the benefits? I already told about the capability gap against an enemy. And if there is available in the market something which is far, far superior, which will bring to you a technical edge over an enemy and force him to spend so much that he collapses, then is another time when you can think of a replacement. And you are, if your budget allows. Budget, of course, is a massive factor in the whole thing. It's how much you can afford to spend. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Brigadier Vijay. See, what also, though from everything which has been said till now, this whole process with the factors, with the filters, with the mathematical aspect, with the data which we can collect, seems to suggest that maybe we can look at it in a scientific model, and one would tend to go towards that. But there's a real life thing also, is that especially in the case of military equipment, your ability to bring it back into action, the turnaround time, that depends on so many factors like the supply chain and whether there is any constraint in that.
Yes.
And sometimes maybe otherwise an equipment which is difficult to maintain, but because you have the supply chain available, you can maintain it and you can carry on using it, and you can bring it back in numbers if you've got well-trained technicians to support it. So these are other factors which are, non-scientific, which are more on the basis of your own assessment of the situation. So now the next question I say is, as we move into the future, how much we go with the scientific aspect and how much we go also with these other aspects, which I just one of them I mentioned, but you have got a lot of experience in the panel, so I will defer to you. So any one of you would like to address this? Please go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Gen Ghosh.
Sir, while Brigadier Vijay has brought out the civil parlance of system effectiveness in terms of cost and performance and other aspects, as well as the military parlance, he brought out the lethality aspect. Similarly, there is something what the service headquarters is supposed to do, which they must be doing, is system effectiveness as a function of total life cycle is basically being defined as a figure of merit, in which that figure of merit is basically your system effectiveness in terms of whatever you've done it in lethality or the civil parlance, total life cycle which has been enunciated by the OEM. If it's got 25 years, 35 years. So that gives a figure of merit based on which also they calculate. One. Second, the cost benefit analysis again has to be worked out by the service headquarters before taking this replacement decision, or by a civil organization before replacing a complete batch of machinery or a production line once it has to come in. So based on these and how they come onto these is because the machine is supposed to give you a mission performance in terms of its reliability and maintainability aspects. Now, the weightages to the reliability and maintainability aspects can be moved over time in terms of even the life cycle sustenance part has been embedded in by the Navy in a very big way, and life cycle costs also are coming into this. So these all aspects can actually get worked out in terms of the mission readiness, in terms of the KPIs, MTTR, MTBF and others, because finally it is the reliability aspect which is critical for military systems and even civil systems, because costs are involved, where you want the equipment to perform the desired function for the desired period for the under the desired specifications and operational conditions. So it should retain that thing, and maintainability is to retain that particular thing. And if it is not retaining and deteriorating over period because of time, usage and deployments, then it has to be brought up to some optimum, if not ideal, but at least an optimum level of reliability for it to perform its intended function, which is in terms of overalls, what we do. We give it a new lease of life. Overall is meant for whom? It is meant for high cost tax, where there is no resale. Now there is a resale. We may give T series to some third world country who is asking for it, but otherwise there is no book value, resale value of a tank or a aircraft or a huge weapon platforms primarily. So you go in for overall, and overall gives that lease of life, gives it to that intended performance, and extends it by about 15-20 years. So that is how you are sustaining. Whereas a B vehicle or a vehicle heavy vehicles as well as commercial vehicles and others, they need not be given any overall. So that decision is for sustaining it, and they have you discard it out. So that is how the balance is between what to replace, when to replace, why to replace, should we replace, and about the readiness of the thing.
Yeah, so thank you very much once again. Young Ghosh, other panelists would like to say something? Go ahead, anybody? Yeah, please go ahead, Air Commodore Murali.
Yes, when it comes to the aviation and to a great extent on the marine, so far the sustenance engineering has been basically on trying to develop our capability or develop the capability on refurbishment. And refurbishment in terms of, not only regaining the dimensions of reasonably back during overall, and also in lieu material. In lieu material development, the country has gained a lot of experience through DMRL and other NMLs. And that capability is a big driver of the future. Now, this what is happening today in the future scenario when it comes to new inductions, they're on intelligent platforms wherein they talk to us. So there is a lot of data which has been giving, and the platforms are talking to us. And that is the time these data has to be collated and assessed. And because of this advanced materials coming in, though they are high performance materials, they are not refurbishable, most of them, especially composites sites. And that is where the capability which we have to develop in handling the future systems. We had to also replacement capability has to develop within the country, and that is again an MRO responsibility.
Yeah, thank you very much. So MRO keeps coming in because if you are going to sustain an equipment beyond its life or whatever, so MRO has to really be very professional at it. That's again and again coming out, no matter what the decision. So anything, Brig Vijay, you would like to say on this point?
Maybe at least as far as Air Force goes, we would also look at the safety and aspect when you decide between replace or sustain.
Sir, rightly said. The safety factor is one thing which gets into our reliability quotient. This is something which we don't play beyond the design books. So if there is something to be replaced, it is a form fit function, or we don't do it. So safety goes without saying, yes. But then there are very, very clear defined schedules and procedures as well as documents to guide us in this. I don't think so anybody takes a deviation on these things.
Thank you very much, Air Commodore Murali. So now I'll come to the final question, and that is that it's obviously a very complex decision, and it will change. It depends on equipment to equipment, and every condition changes because of that. And so now, with all this thing which we have discussed, I would now request the panelists to just give in their closing remarks, and also to give the one or two in their minds, which are the main factors which have a very large influence on this decision, whatever comes to each one of you. So I'll start with the other way around now. I'll request first Air Commodore Murali. What are the main factors you feel?
So sustenance engineering is something which is a part of the product development, and sustenance engineering is science by itself. And this inputs of the sustenance engineering or output of the sustenance engineering should be an input for the replacements. From this, why we did a modification, why we did an upgrade, should be your next product quality or product QRs, SQRs, whatever it is. So this is a big driver. Sustenance is a big driver to engineer better for the future. And as far as the product quality is concerned, through sustenance engineering, it goes without saying that when we do modification upgrades, the product quality is only improving for fighting the war. And summing it up, sir, I said we cannot replace without sustenance. Unless we sustain a system, replacement will be not that good or probably not as conducive to us for our requirements, because sustenance engineering throws up how we use the product, what all we learn, what our conditions in the country are playing on the reliability of that particular product. And that only gives us the input to replace a good product.
Thank you, Air Commodore Murali. Brigadier Vijay, please.
So the most important factor I feel is the operational lethality or effectiveness of an equipment. It has to be operationally lethal or operationally effective. It has to be integrated and be functional in the tactics of the particular force which is using it. Budget is always important. If you don't have the funds, then you have to take a call, and then you look at levelized cost of sustainment versus replacement, or you slowly have a leaner force and change your tactics. Another thing could be what is the status of the MRO facilities? How good is the MRO facilities within the organization, in the civil, in the nation being developed to sustain such a fleet? And if it is good, then your sustainment model will increase. Otherwise, you will have to go towards the use and throw model, which is certainly not the best way ahead. So a lot of this will decision on whether you replace or sustain depends on it may be worthwhile investing into the MRO facilities so that you can upgrade your weapon systems and keep it relevant. Originally gave a plan, must have thought of a 25-year life of a tank, say. But if MRO facilities around improve, technology improves, your capability of adding upgrades improves, then you can sustain such an equipment for 35 years also.
Thank you, Brigadier Vijay. General Ghosh, what are the main factors according to you which weigh on this decision? And your concluding remarks also, please.
I fully agree with both the panelists, sir, that though we said sustain or replace, these two are the two sides of the same coin. Sustenance is critical. Replacement follows. If sustenance has been built in terms of what Commodore Murali brought out at the acquisition stage, what Brigadier Vijay brought out, the MRO facility is getting more weightage because acquiring a weapon platform or weapon system or an equipment is just, we all know, is just the tip of the iceberg. And there are so many other costs below, which is totally on the sustenance base. So if 90% of the cost lies below the iceberg, it is time that we start looking at the sustenance in a much better and a more higher prioritized area. Replacements are inevitable. They will happen. It has to happen scientifically in terms of scientific models. Models will vary from a major weapon platform to a minor weapon system or equipment per se. Those models can be tweaked to have different weightages, reliability aspect or maintainability aspect or design aspect or disruptive technology aspect or countermeasure aspect or whatever you have in terms of your threat perceptions and requirements of being effective. And finally, it will be the class of equipment which will determine what is your sustenance policy long term, trying to extend the life from useful life to certain extensions through different upgrades that we brought out already earlier, and which doesn't require sustenance to be discarded at the earliest so that it doesn't become inefficient and adds to your operating cost. We have to look at the full budget. So as a full budget is what the whole aim is, to reduce cost. We have to look at life cycle cost in a much, much bigger manner. And in that, it will very obviously come out that MRO and sustenance are what actually required to be addressed if we want a full effectiveness and full value for our money. That's also. Thank you.
Thank you, General Ghosh, for that. So viewers, in our channel, we have another panel discussion, which had looked at life cycle cost in detail. You may like to have a look at it. As you can see in today's discussion, it has emerged that it's a complex decision, and there are many factors which are in play, and it's not an easy decision to make. And however, since it impacts on the budget, impacts on cost, it's a decision which has to be fine-tuned as much as possible. I'm sure from this very knowledgeable panel which we have today. There are so many insights and so many very nice methods which have emerged, which can be looked at in detail to arrive at a better decision, a more optimal decision. We at MRO Digest Forums have got many experts with us who have decades of experience in MRO, and we will keep coming back to you in a variety of panel discussions related to MRO and also to technology in general. So we'll bring the views of these experts, and the links to the profiles of our panelists are there in the show notes below. You're welcome to get in touch with them for any further discussion you may like to have on what was discussed today. With that, we will close today's panel discussion. Thank you very much to our panelists and our viewers. Jai Hind.